people, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. It is the penultimate day before Sean meets his Eskimo love. I can't wait. How's everybody doing? It's back. The boys are back in town for some devil's advocate, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies if I'm going to get cancelled straight out off the bat. That took me 30 seconds to put together, and I got as many Norwegian pictures off of Google and crammed it into the iMovie. Can't wait to meet them. Can't wait to see how we get on this afternoon, guys. What is crack-a-lacking, says Benny Boy. Good to see you. Good to see Darren Johnson, Tom, Alex, and Tony, and a new member, Dom Byrne. Thank you very much for your support, buddy. Really appreciate that. Dom.
65 million down the drain. Dom Byrne scores again.
How we doing, Dave? Good to have you back, mate. How's things?
Yeah, I'm good. I thought I was in a nightclub in Norway there for a minute, you know, but realised I'm not. I'm on Spurs Talk Show. No, I'm good. Good to be back.
Mate, part of me is tempted to F off the flight home at 1 o'clock in the morning and just go and beg and sleep on someone's fjord, someone's empty crash or whatever, and then next day go, what are we doing in Norway? Johnny boy, how are you, mate? Let me put you at the top end. Have some respect for the guests. I'm coming down the bottom. What's crack-a-lacking?
Some respect for the guests. I feel like I'm in celebrity squares now. Listen, all good. Like, excited. I'm trying to forget. Actually, I posted something earlier. It really made me laugh. Have you seen The Wolf of Wall Street? We're on the boat and they're all partying like this. Yeah, Spurs in Europe, and then heavy seas like this when Spurs are in the Premier League. We, just try and forget everything that's happened this season, right? I'm just going to pretend it hasn't happened. And like tomorrow is, I just reckon tomorrow and when we win on the 21st are the biggest dates probably in the last 20 odd years at this club. It really is that big for where we go from here. So I'm really excited, nervous, but excited. And I was hoping to see the Northern Lights and experience some cold and snow. And they got a frigging heat wave and it's drizzly. So I'm not going to see the Northern Lights.
Yeah, but the Norwegians, when Tottenham turn up, they're going to see the Norwegian frights. It's going to be some toothless, sort of knuckle-dragging morons. Oh, you Spurs! Just to really lower the tone. Can't wait to see it. Dave, are you looking forward to Thursday, mate?
I am. But I'm also nervous about Thursday, going into this game. Coming into the home leg, they said they'd be happy to lose 2-0 or 3-1 and take us out there. And look, they score a lot of goals at home. Their away legs across the Europa League campaign haven't been great, but at home, over the years and especially this season, they took some big scalps. They score goals there. They absolutely dominated Lazio there. They could have had that game overdone in the first leg. And I do think, with it being out in the Arctic Circle, different weather, smaller changing rooms, all that unsettles the player. The artificial pitch, I think it's a leveler, because the ball bounces different, slide tackle at your own risk, which means your positioning is going to have to be perfect. We're not exactly known for our positioning. We're known for like Van de Ven and Romero sort of bailing us out. So I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit nervous. I think an early goal really changes the fortunes for them. I think then it swings the tie in their favour. What we can't let it do is go to extra time and penalties. If they take us the distance, they will do us. So, look, I just think that goal, that they score just keeps them in it. It keeps the tie alive. And look, to be honest with you, even if we went over there losing, we'd be nervous. Even if we went over there with 3-0, we'd still be nervous. Just the way we are as Spurs fans. And you got to take into account, we've got some of our best players now injured, and then they're getting some of their best players back. So, I think it's game on Thursday night. It's not done and dusted. Anyone that's sleepwalking into this, do it at your peril. They fancy themselves out there. When they brought in that Norwegian fighter pilot in 2018, he's changed the fortunes of their whole club. That Norwegian fighter pilot, he says, don't talk about winning, don't talk about 3 points. Focus on performance. You get your performance right, everything else will follow. Since then, since he's come in, they've won 4 out of 5 league titles, a couple of cups, and they've taken on some of the biggest teams in Europe over there. A lot of teams don't like going there. It's a long journey. It's cold. The change rooms are smaller. It's all very unsettling. And you can go back to Tottenham against Tamworth. We struggled that day largely. Did the whole thing around it, smaller ground, AstroTurf pitch, etc. And not only that, I remember when we played young boys in Switzerland back in 2010, 2011. We were 3-0 down at half time over there. We ended up losing 3-2 over there. So, people say, pitch shouldn't make too much of a difference, but it does. When we're training on grass pitches all the time, because we're playing on grass pitches, training on one AstroTurf isn't the same as playing on a different one. They're all different types of turf, surfaces, etc. So it's not going to be an easy game.
I mean, the thing is, look, we're on, they're probably playing on 4G. We're used to 5G. We got a faster pitch, better signal.
Apparently not, Johnny. Apparently they soak their pitch so much that it zips with an extra half a yard.
Oh yeah, look, they're going to get.
Worries me more than anything because Vicario's slow getting down, right?
Well, listen, look, just like when you have the cricket, for those who watch the cricket, you try to get advantage, whether it's watering the pitch or drying the pitch out. I just want to address a couple of things, right? Just for argument, just to address a couple of people. You know who you are. When I said that Spurs, that Bodo were missing 5 players in the first leg, one of the players, the winger, managed to get on for 70 minutes, but they were in fact missing 4 key players. They were missing their main centre back. He was out, right? He's their main guy. They were missing Patrick Berg. They were missing their his midfield partner, and they were missing their main striker, the guy who scored the goal against Roma. So they were missing, let me just say, they were missing Captain Patrick Berg, Hakon Eidven, and Helmalson are all suspended, right? The latter was sent off against Lazio, and the centre-back never made it. So,
and we're just fans, mate. I make 100 proclamations and I'm wrong.
No, I'm just saying. No. My point here is what I said was that Spurs should have absolutely smashed them because these weren't 4 also-rans, Sean, that were missing. They were their four of their main players, and they're all back.
It's still Bodo, though, guys. Come on, are we guilty here of giving them a little bit too much?
No.
I'm not saying disrespect. I'm not saying don't respect them.
You have to listen, right?
Yeah, respect them, but also it's not like Real Madrid. Come on.
No, should we? We obviously know that, Sean, right? We have to respect them, right? We have to respect them. But as Dave quite rightly said, the clubs that have gone there previously without any respect have come back empty-handed, right? That's all we're saying, right?
We also got to look at Tottenham's record over the years in Europe. Dynamo Zagreb, Vitesse Arnhem,
the guy was in jail.
Mora, Pachos de Ferreira.
Yeah.
This season you go to Galatasaray, AZ Alkmaar, away from home. Rangers away from home, terrible. We are terrible away from home in Europe. I know we beat Frankfurt, 1-0, but that's an anomaly. Away from home in Europe generally, Tottenham get embarrassed. If you don't show up with the right attitude, if I see players walking out with gloves on, the socks tucked right in under their knees, I know we're not up for that game.
9 degrees. It's 8 to 9 degrees and it's been raining. We're used to it, right? It's a heat wave in Norway.
I'd say we're more used to that than they are.
Yeah, it's a heat wave for them, right? It's a heat wave. They would be hoping for.
They'll be having water drinks after 10 minutes.
Don't underestimate the Arctic wind, boys.
No, there's no wind. I've checked everything. Everything's in our favour. On Friday, it was 0 degrees and snowing, right, with the wind. Now it's going to be 8 or 9 degrees, according to the Met Office. I've done the weather forecast. I've done the check. Look, let's not beat around the bush, right? Losing Maddison and losing Berg isn't going to be easy. But listen, we've got all those pitches at Tottenham Hotspur Way. I'm sure someone's done some research and found a pitch for us to practice on.
No, they haven't. They said that they're. And Ange said in his post-match.
Ange lies. Have you noticed?
Okay. Well, maybe. Okay. He said that they aren't going to bother doing that because each pitch bounces differently, and that they're just going to wait and get there on Wednesday tomorrow, and then spend the day on the training ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I think that's wild. I'd rather they spent all week on a variety of pitches that are artificial rather than going, oh, you know what, because they all bounce differently, let's not bother at all. How about you just go and get a sample of different pitches and then see if you can just get used to the weird bounces that are, happening on all of, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd rather be over-prepared than under-prepared. And I feel like that's a bit of a strange one. What I would say, though, boys, and I do want to get into a bunch of
can't even sort out the bounce on a green grass pitch.
The artificial pitch is a different game, though, because from, the ball tends to skid off the surface a lot quicker. So it's a lot different as a defender, and it's a lot different as a midfielder and a striker, especially as a striker. Balls that you think, yeah, perfect. All of a sudden, that sort of slides off the surface. It's just traveling for miles. It's a complete different game. That first 15, 20 minutes out in Bodo is going to be absolutely crucial. What we can't do is allow them to come on to us and batter down the door and try and score an early goal. I would argue, in years gone by when we've suffered some of them embarrassing defeats, we've played counter-attacking football where we've drawn them onto us and we've ultimately end up paying the price. So just wonder if we go out there and actually look to put the press on and go at them for the first 20 minutes, flip the script. I wonder will it actually serve us better, going out there, so to speak, playing Ange ball than the way we have gone out and approached games in previous years under more pragmatic managers. Look, we should be beating Bodo Glimt Thursday night. If we don't, it's a catastrophe. Yeah. But let's not get too carried away. Tottenham have gone out to worse teams and been absolutely embarrassed, and the warning signs are there, especially with this team this season. We should be beating them, but it's not a foregone conclusion.
Would you have taken 3-1?
100%.
Beforehand?
I would have took 2-1. I would have took 3-1. Any scoreline. I just want to go over there with something to hold on to. But it's about how we go out there and approach it. Like I said, when we've gone out under Nuno, Conte, Jose, we've played pragmatic football. For me, they're going to look to try and get at us early, use the boisterousness of the crowd, look to try and see, if we're taking our time to adjust to the pitch, the conditions, the surroundings, etc. They're going to use that to their advantage and come at us. What we need to do is flip the script and push them back early, not give them any momentum.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you guys. Sorry, because I've got like 7 different topics to ask you guys today. But seeing as we start with Bodo, let's just crack on with it. To play devil's advocate, like I hear you, but I share your same, like, let's not over or underestimate them and go too cocky because it could easily be unwound. I share your fears around what could be.
Be pragmatic, Sean. I definitely think for all the bravado and all the talk, the only way to beat Bodo is to, they're very good in transition. They're very good at attacking. I think if we play defensively, we'll be all right. The strangest thing is going to be, like I said to you earlier, is the fact that we're going to be starting the game at 9:00 at night and it's going to be bright.
That's not another variable that we're not used to for sure. You'd hope that the club are prepared. I don't give the credit to the club to prepare the players because that nocturnal sunlight, nighttime at noon thing is odd and it's unusual, and that can have a little. You don't know what that sort of shit can do to your clock, right? Like it can just mess you around a little bit. But where I was going to ask you guys is how you approach the game. Now Dave has said you go at them and do a bit more Ange ball, and that obviously brings you vulnerabilities. It also maybe catches them unaware. They'll probably assume we're going to go and sit back and try and counter. My idea this week has been you remove as much of the variable of the pitch as possible, especially given the fact that Maddison is out, right? And the fact that we've got Richalison and Solanke that both look to be fit. For me, what I would like to see is Pedro Porro with the most touches in the game, 100+ touches, of which you do the ratios, right? Do the math. If he can whip 40 crosses in, you'd imagine that Richarlison and Solanke can get on the end of 1 or 2, and then you haven't got to worry about the bounce of the ball because the ball's in the air. And I think that Richarlison, Solanke, and from corner kicks, you've got Decky, you've got Bentancur, you've got Romero, all of whom are handy in the air. Half of your team is a threat offensively if you keep the ball off the floor and you keep the ball in the air. And I think that Maddison's absence, to me, like compounds on the value of that strategy. So I'd like to see Pedro Porro be the most involved player, and I want to see him whip balls in. And his performance on Thursday is for me going to be telling. If he can put it on the sixpence, then I think that Solanke, Richarlison, Etal, Decky have enough about them to win a couple of headers. And then you just hope that if there's enough opportunities, you're going to get one of them put in the back of the net. And I think we only need 1 goal. I think if we get 1 goal, we should be okay.
Yeah,
Johnny? Or Dave, whoever.
No, go on, Johnny.
No, all I was going to say was that they were playing. I don't want to keep reiterating this point, but Patrick Berg is their conductor, right? He's the maestro.
He's great on set pieces.
Yeah, he's fantastic at set pieces. Second, Lil, this guy who's scoring all their goals, the guy who scored the winner, who got them through at Lazio, he was missing. His midfield, Patrick Berg's midfield partner, his enforcer, was also missing, and so was their centre-back. So they will carry more of a threat, which is why I would rather start with a low block personally and play them on the counter-attack with Porro and Destiny crossing the balls in, like Sean said before. I think if we go at them and we just try to, play expansive football, they will beat us through the lines because of our midfield. I'm not sure the midfield, has been quite vulnerable. And let's be honest, it was shocking against West Ham. So let's wait and see. But I think one goal secures it for us.
I think what we can't do, though, is sit off them. We've got to go and get that front line to press that back line. If we start sitting off them and allowing them to start spraying the balls around, we will end up getting caught. That Patrick Berg as well, he's very good at set pieces, got a very good delivery on him, so what we can't do is sit off them. We have to go and press them. We have to force them into that long ball. But then, what I want to see us do is when we do get that ball, I want to see Richalison out on the left again, or up in that forward line, even if it's on the right, with Solanke up top again. Because for me, I think what we should do is look to almost go back to traditional English football, go longer, put the ball up on top of the striker, get them to win the ball. Because then what you can do is then if they end up pulling you down and get the ball out for throwing, you push up to the halfway line, then you start playing your football. It's just about being smart. But what
would you go 4-4-2 then?
Drop off them.
I
wouldn't go 4-4-2. I'd keep the same formation. I think if you switch it up to a 4-4-2, that's where you will see players earlier on getting caught out of position and stuff like that. I'd go with the same formation. I would just play some big men up front. I think you've got to play Richarlison. You've got to play Dom Solanke, because that means no matter what defender or even Vicario, if they get the ball and they're being pressed, as long as they put the ball in that vicinity between the two of them, one of them should be able to go and challenge for that. So it gives us an out ball consistently in the game, which means then players in possession are not panicking. If this is relayed to them beforehand, if you're under pressure, put it in that vicinity, then there should be no problems.
On that then, Dave, I'll stick with you on this one. If you're going 4-3-3, and I agree, just bang it long, man. Let's just find a way to get it done.
Get up in their half and play from there, get foothold.
Yeah, 100%. And for what it's worth, Berg is their best player, and their striker's handy and decent in the air. If you play the big boys like we've all just agreed on, again, difficult to agree on the devil's advocate, so I'm going to try and find a way to disagree with you. And here's where I'm going to go with it. Berg, right, if he's that sensational a player, why isn't he playing for a bigger team? Right, he's a good player, used to playing on a certain surface, and is dangerous for sure. But, you could go to Leyton Orient, and if you curtail Jamie Donnelly, right, you're going to have a better chance, right? So I just feel like we just nullify Berg, and
but the thing is, you see, these things weren't in question in the first game, right? And yet we still only beat them 3-1. My point here is that, look, as individuals, Patrick Berg went off to France, right? Didn't quite make it. But my point here is that we've seen before, if you have lots of cogs in a wheel, these guys have been playing together for a long time together.
Yeah.
They know each other inside out. So as a collective, they're very strong.
Speak Norwegian, right?
As individuals, they're not outstanding as individuals, bar maybe a couple. But as a collective, they're strong. You can't knock a team that's in the semi-finals, however much they've got there. We've got there, but they weren't expected to get there. Their progression has been superb over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? And that's because they've worked well as a collective. Look, we saw when Leicester won the league, as standout individuals, there was maybe 2 or 3, but in essence, it was the collective that made them strong. And, we have got good individuals. Real Madrid had fantastic individuals, but they're not playing as a team. And that's their strongest point. And when you put these 4 cogs back in the wheel, on Thursday, right, they are going to be stronger. But I believe we can win. Otherwise, I wouldn't be booked up, ready to go.
Hard work and a good collective will beat talent every day if the talent doesn't want to work hard. Right. And it's simple. That's why they're there. Let's not forget they beat Lazio, who finished top of that Europa League group, by the way. You know, and everyone goes after that. Oh, well, Lazio bang average. No, Bodo Glimt
beat Galatasaray. They beat Olympiacos.
Besiktas, did they beat Besiktas?
They also lost to Karabag. Let's not. Let's. I think we're guilty here a little bit.
Not at home though. Was it at home?
Yeah, it was at home. Yeah, I think we're guilty a little. And Karabag finished bottom of the entire Europa League. Right. So to me, I'm just saying, and this is devil's advocate. I hear you. I share your concerns. I'm scared. I'm a little bit nervous. I don't know if Helga's going to turn up. All those things are. You know, all those things are problematic for me. You know, I haven't got my Krona yet. I haven't got enough for the sauna. So it's going to be a wonderful day full of nerves, which I wanted a little bit of jeopardy because I wanted to think that the value for money was there. Someone's just put in the chat, by the way, that you can get 8-1 on Bodo to qualify. Yeah. They are ridiculously good odds. I'm going to be going dropping 200 quid after this stream so I can get some of my money back if the worst case happens. But let me ask you this, boys. It sounds like we're all somewhat in agreement with the kind of complexity and the variables, but there's a little bit of a different stance here on how you go about it. Let me simplify this for you. Who are the top 3 most important players to have out of their world, out of the unorthodoxly good performances from them on Thursday night from a Tottenham perspective? Dave, I'll start with you.
Players that need to have a good performance.
Well, no, they all do. But who? If we're going to get through this and it's going to be like a nice night at the office, then who are the 3 most important players in Tottenham's 11?
Ooh, I think Romero and Van de Ven are absolutely crucial. You know, they have to try and keep a clean sheet. They have to marshal that defense. You know, they have to be on it. They can't allow runners in behind them. I am a little bit concerned about Van de Ven and Romero slightly because if Bodo Glimt do get forward at home, they do send runners forward. They do send runners beyond the ball, and they will play them. Van de Ven and Romero sometimes can just lose track of them runners. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But apart from that, if we can get the press on and force them to go along, Romero and Van de Ven will clean that up all day long. So that's how we can navigate that. And then for me, do you know what? I think Kulu. I think the loss of James Maddison is massive loss. You know, you look at this Europa League campaign, he's been heavily involved in us breaking down the opposition and scoring goals with assists and goals himself. You look, he scored in the leg just gone against Bodo. He was the one that won the penalty away from home in Frankfurt. You know, he's had a massive hand in this run. So he's going to be a huge miss. So basically, you need someone in that midfield that can get on that ball and pull the strings. So I think one area of Maddison's game that's actually underrated is the amount of times he actually drops deep and gets that ball and gets turned and gets us going forward. You don't have that now with the likes of Berghvall and Maddison out injured. Kulu, he would lose that ball in them deeper positions. Pape Matar Sarr, Bissouma, they're likely to lose that ball in them deeper positions. So for me, I think Kulu, he's come back from his injury. He hasn't hit the early season form that he had. He's struggling to come back like he did when he had an injury under Conte, by the way. When he came back for the rest of that season, he was quite disappointing. So I think Kulusevski is absolutely crucial. We do need someone to pick them strings. And then when they do get that ball, feed the wingers, feed the striker with a little bit of quality. That's something that's been missing from Kulu's game. His decision-making since his return has been quite poor. And that's an area of his game that he really needs to improve. And look, to be honest, I'm not sure it's going to come from him, but we really need him to have a performance from the gods in that midfield, because if we lose that midfield battle, it's going to be a long fucking evening.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, out of their 28 goals that they've scored in the league, in the Europa League this season, only 3 have come outside the box. They're more of a fox in a box type.
This is why I absolutely love you, mate. When you're not talking, you're not just sitting there waiting for your next chance to speak like some people do. You are doing some digging. You're figuring out a stat. You're going to come in with some new information that I haven't. I've been too lazy to go and find out for myself. You're always working, mate. You are the Dom Solanke of the Spurs Talk Show.
I'd rather be. Don't give me the Dom Solanke. Because,
I don't know. You're a workhorse, mate. You're a workhorse.
I mean, look. I think the thing is that, you know, we have these players. I've got to be honest with you. Have the players that we've been talking about the centre-back, the two midfielders and the striker been playing, right, in that game when we won 3-1, I wouldn't be worried. I was just a bit concerned that there were times, especially in that second half, in the last 20 minutes, where they seemed to have quite a lot of the ball. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that because we are vulnerable at the back. Look, it's a massive night. You asked Dave which you thought were the main players.
Yeah, main three.
I actually think it's about probably whoever plays our holding midfield. I think Bissouma, Benton Core and Bissouma are going to be crucial tonight, and probably Romero. They're probably the three, that sort of triangle of holding the ball up and not.
I worry that Romero's going to forget. He's going to have a bozo moment, forget that he's playing on rubber, and that he's going to slide in and like rip half the skin off his leg like he's in a motorbike accident. Look, he'll be out for give himself third-degree burns.
Van Ven pulling another hamstring is a potential on that turf.
Yeah, no, listen, injuries are a big worry on that pitch, and I can see us, it's going to be a worry. But the thing is, what we have in this squad are players who have played at the highest level, a level well above anything Bodo have. You've got Benton Core, who's played in World Cups. You've got Romero, who's played in World Cups. We have players of another higher echelon of experience, and I think that is what's going to get us away. But I had another dream last night, Sean, that I was having an argument with you. Not an argument, but I fucking told you. I told you that Son was going to start, right? I knew it. He's not fit. Harry Kane vibes. Harry Kane vibes.
Yeah.
To start.
By the way, who did I hear? I heard that Sonny's going to start the final and do the kind of Champions League 2019 thing all over again. The first person I heard say that was Emerson Royal, and it was like
Emerson Royal.
Huh?
Who's Emerson Royal?
Barry. You know Barry? Barry.
No.
You know Barry? Nick Collison. You know him.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
We call him Barry all the time. Yeah. He comes up with some absolute gems, and that one I was like, he's spot on about that. And then you said it a couple of days later, and then I think a few other people started saying it. I think that's right. I think that Sonny. Do you know what though? Given the kind of, I'm open-minded to it. I don't think that Sonny deserves to start based on his form, but actually in the final, if we get there, and then looking at the other options. I know we had a big debate last night with Lubo and yourself, Johnny, about like the merits of Micky Moore, which are part of the content topics in a minute. I think that maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm torn on this one, but like if Sonny's fit, can you really deny this legend of the club the chance if he's fully fit? Can you not like
not on the left hand side? No, look. The thing is, I'll never forget that Mora. That's one of the greatest single-handed feats I can ever remember at this football club. They were 3 fantastic goals, right? Incredible finishes, and he single-handedly dragged us to that final. And as much as I love Poch, it's hard to forgive him dropping Lucas Moura. The look of Moura on that bench when I looked across and saw his face, he looked crestfallen, on that bench. And Harry wasn't fit. I mean, he could barely get across the pitch at the final whistle at Ajax, to help celebrate. He looked like he was limping.
Well, if he had to change direction, he could run in a straight line because he's done his primary rehab, but he hadn't done the twist and turns thing. So he had to pick the direction and fly like a bird.
It didn't look convincing. Let's put it like that. And I just said, "There's no way." And I wasn't just alone there. Everyone
said. Everyone was like, "What are we doing here? He shouldn't be playing."
But
it was outrageous on Lucas Moura, to be honest.
But let's be honest, who would he be replacing? Right, Matthias Tell and Son or
Richalison.
No, but I think when you look at it, Richalison will be much fitter over the next few games. He's only going to get stronger because he wasn't match fit. But when you look at what he's done for the club, he probably will be there. But I just think that he has to be fit It cannot be sentiment. Should we get to that final? Sentiment.
No, of course. Oh, yeah, of course. You've got to prove
it has done in the past.
You've got to prove it against Villa. By the way, looks like Villa. Yeah. I've said this a couple of days ago. Villa are quietly becoming my most hated club. I can't stand them for a number of reasons, and they're quietly becoming a new rival.
You and I both, mate.
Yeah, fuck them. But so it looks like they're getting their wish to screw us over declined, and that they are going to move the game, which is only good news. Just to finish off the topic we were talking about there, for me, it's interesting that you've all said different names. And in the chat, a lot. Lee Enigma said he wanted the back line. He said 5. He said the whole back line obviously is the most important, and the goalkeeper. I think you can't argue that everyone needs to put in a shift. You've gone with Bissouma and Bentancur there, Johnny, and Dave's gone with Romero, Decky, and I think you said
and Kinsky.
And
Van der Ven. For me, I think that Pedro Porro is going to be, like I said, if I have my way and we played the way I've suggested, who knows what we're going to do. But if we did do it that way, if you get him on the most touches on the night, 100 plus touches, and 40 of those are crosses into danger zones from deep or from corners or whatever, I think we've got enough in our height and our aerial threat offensively to cause some problems. And like I say, keep the ball off the turf. Remove the turf as a barrier to entry. So for me, it's massive. But like you say, you've all made compelling arguments. I do want to ask you though, right, about this. So we got a link yesterday. This is just a kind of temporary pivot, guys. One of the transfer links that's emerged in the last 24 hours, and it's heating up. It's out there again today in stronger articles, stronger journalists that you give a little bit more credibility to. Yves Bissouma, right, from Inter Milan, German international, only just recently got his German first cap. 24 years old, plays for Inter. Normally, I would just sit there and go, why would anyone leave? But he's only earning 35 grand a week in Inter. He's been an ever-present part of their Champions League campaign. And this guy is someone that I've always admired. I think he's a beast. He's brilliant in the air. He loves to run with the ball. He's not a bad passer. And his tackling stats look appalling if you run them through the FB refs relative to other centre-backs. But that is essentially, as far as I can, I'm sort of splitting hairs here, but it looks to me like the only reason why his tackle stats are so low is because the guy doesn't slide in, right? So his positional play, his ability to predict where the ball's going to be and get there and just do like an offensive duel or a defensive duel and just body the man out of the way. He doesn't fall over. And so when you're looking at games like on Thursday, when you go, well, we've just spoken about it, right? Romero sliding in, Micky Van sliding in. Maybe potentially injuries. That's going to potentially disrupt us for the. I hope that the club are aware of that. I just wanted to ask you guys whether you're familiar with Yves Bissouma from Inter and whether you rate him as highly as I do, because I think that is someone that you pay enough money to. People go, why would you leave? Well, it's obvious why someone would leave, right? It's because you're going to 30 grand a week is a lot of money for us, a load of money. But these guys only have a 10-year shelf life, and he's 24 years old. And he could go and earn 100 grand a week at Tottenham. If you're going to get paid 3.5 times your current salary, you'd think about it, right? And I just think this guy is a perfect replacement for Romero because he's quality in all the areas that Romero's good at. Maybe not as good a passer, but in terms of the chaos gene that Romero inhibits, this guy doesn't because he's so good at reading the game. And those links are starting to heat up, and with the Paratici thing, which we're going to come to in a minute, boys, because I know you guys are the champions of the Don, so I want to get your takes on that. But just before we move on to that one, Yves Bissouma links. Romero looks like he's out, looks like he's gone. 5-year deals, pretty much agreed in principle between the player and Atletico Madrid. Where do we go for a replacement? You've got Mark Gahey, but he'll cost a fortune, even though he shouldn't because he's got 1 year left.
Sean, can I just rewind that? Sorry. What do you mean it's agreed? Where's this?
Well, no, sorry, it's not agreed, but like it's agreed between according to reports. It's agreed between the player and the agent and the club.
Right. I just need to put some context into this, right? Because Atletico Madrid don't have any money, right? Okay. They spent all their money on Man City's, what's the name striker last season, Alvarez, right? And they don't have the money. No one in Europe is flush with money. I know that the Champions League has been a game changer for many clubs in Europe. And we were having this conversation about the lesser clubs now suddenly having much more money than they had before because it's been expanded, which has been good for it. So, even if you don't qualify for the big, for the knockout stages, you can still earn much more than probably Spurs earn getting to a quarterfinal or a semi. But only the state clubs, state-funded clubs, have really got that much money. And I, as much as they have players, what players do we really want? Do we really want Conor Gallagher? Right? What you can't. This club cannot forward, sell, buy any players until they know exactly what manager is coming into this club and the type of player that he's going to require. And that's why, quite honestly, this club is on hold now until we've made the decision. And
I hope the decision's made, though, Johnny, right?
Oh,
This is what I've been saying over the last couple of weeks.
100%, Sean, which is exactly where I'm going. Because if we haven't made a decision right now and we haven't lined up a manager, then this club is in a frigging mess. Because we have to know the second that transfer window opens, who's coming in, what players he wants. Because otherwise, our whole transfer window, everyone that we've looked at for Ange is now out the window. Because
it's the most, you're right, it's the most important decision, but it looks, for all intents and I was saying this in a show the other one of my walks a couple of days ago, you know, like the unknown unknowns, right? Like not knowing all this stuff means you can't do anything, and it's an absolute nightmare. If we have to wait to Vinny to come in June, and then he sits there and he wants to have a conversation with all these other people in the backroom staff to figure out whether, you know, missions are aligned, all that nonsense. I was like, you have to make that decision now. You have to know what you want to do regardless. It doesn't take an outcome to have made a plan A and a plan B. And ideally, the plan A is to go in a direction regardless of the outcome. But those decisions need to be made now. And I think it's absolutely critical that we don't waste 2 months of a precious window when there's so many factors that are happening outside of Tottenham. The world order is changing in football in the Premier League. And it's crucial that and then the next day, Paratici looks like he's back. And that's not confirmed yet, but the AC Milan thing, they've gone in a different direction. So it looks like that's happening, right? And then you've got noise out regarding it's no longer going to be Iriola. We know that one's dead pretty much.
What happens if it's Xavi, right? If it's Xavi and we win the Champions League and we get into the Champions League, then the conversation is different. Because when Xavi comes in, he's got far more credibility, with great respect, than Ange Postecoglou. And if he sits down and has a meeting with Cuti Romero and says, look, Cuti, I want to be your main man. We got money coming into the club. We got big money coming into
Sell him anyway, mate. Sell him. Sorry.
I'm just saying. I'm just giving Cuti an example. There will be players that will want to leave the club. It may be Kulu.
I hear you. Maddison, Porro. I hear you.
Whoever it may be. It might be Pedro Porro.
That doesn't mean that you can't have. That doesn't mean that you can't have conditional plans in place, right? That's all I'm asking for.
If you have the manager in place, if you know
that's what I'm saying. I think that Paratici knows who he wants.
Yeah,
and I really hope that. And no disrespect to Ange, I'm happy to say thank you next. Give you a pat on the back. Let you say, yeah, fuck you. You know, I told you so. Whatever. But I don't, and I understand if the club have made a decision that on a basis of meritocracy he stays. That's fine with me. I don't want it to be the case, but I can understand it logically. I can understand it, but I would hope that the club have made the decision regardless, and I hope that Paratici and the Vinny have come in and gone. We're not actually officially there yet, but let's have conversations. What are we doing on day one? We're doing this.
4 months, Sean. We cannot ever be in a situation again like we were last time, where it took 4 months to appoint Ange Postecoglou.
And before that, it was Nuno, right? It took 4 monends to get Nuno in. It's terrible.
When you think about all the managers that were available, you know, quality managers that were available at that time, to end up with Ange, you know, no disrespect to him, but you know,
is that not maybe an indication then that these quality managers don't want to come to Tottenham Hotspur then?
Well, that's always
it's taken so long to appoint these guys. You know, maybe it's an indication that we are trying to get out there and get them, but we're being turned down left, right, and centre, and that's why we're ending up at these guys.
But Dave, you know what? I hear what you're saying, and it really, when you think about it, yes. But actually, what have you got to lose coming to Spurs? You get a fantastic salary, you get a fantastic payoff, right? If you've got no one's ever succeeded. So should you succeed, you become a hero. And if you leave, you always go on to another club and be successful. That's the way it's always been.
I'm not quite sure about. We sit here and we say that, but then it took months to appoint these managers, and the best managers don't really want to sign on the dotted line and put their name to this. If you're coming to the end of the career, and money's your motivation. Yeah, fine. Why wouldn't you come to Tottenham? You're going to get a large payoff, and it's probably going to go wrong anyway. But if you're a manager on the rise, or a manager that actually wants a longevity in his managerial career, and stuff, you're not banking it on Tottenham. Arne Slot was prime example. He picked Liverpool because they have a history of doing the transfer business correct. They have a history of backing their managers. They've got a good core to their squad that's been around a long time. When he was looking at Tottenham Hotspur, he had to fight to try and bring some coaching staff with him. You know what I mean? When you're a manager and you're having to fight for everything, then also that there could be excuses come the transfer window to not be backed, or you might not exactly get the quality of players that you need to make your system work, combined by the media on your case straight away, combined by the fans on your case straight away. And when you look at how Jose's walked out of this club, Conte's walked out of this club, Nuno's walked out of this club, and how Ange's going to lead this club, every manager since Pochettino, their reputation has been damaged. And, everyone says, with Jose Mourinho, he's too old. He can't do modern day football. Walked into Roma. He won the Europa Conference League. Everyone said with Conte, his tactics, this, that, everything else, he doesn't want to be here, whatever. He leaves. Look at him now. He's challenging for a league title with Napoli. Everyone, the fans called for Nuno's head at the against Man United. Look what he's doing with Nottingham Forest now. And this is my point. If you're a manager and you look what these managers are suffering, it's going to only get worse and worse, but you're not going to sign on that dotted line, especially if you've got ambition in the game.
Because it hasn't held any of them back, right? No. All of those managers went on to get decent jobs. All of them got a payoff. All of them got paid off massively for their short tenures. And that's the beautiful thing about contract work, right? Like, you're getting your full salary, whether you're here for a minute or the whole time. And Nuno made fucking, what was 15 million quid out of Tottenham for 2 months' work. It was outrageous. And he went on, he's doing good things at Nottingham Forest, but obviously they're falling off the cliff at the moment, and we'll see how that story finishes. But Conte wasn't held back. His reputation wasn't dented, because don't forget, the fan base at Tottenham, at least on the online space, love to have a boogeyman, and the invisible enemy is always the one that's easiest, because you always get to ask for things that are unrealistic outcomes, knowing that you're never going to be proven wrong if you're a fan that leans in that direction. And that's fine, by the way, no problem with it. But for me, the money's a driver. You're getting your payoff wherever. If you come to Tottenham and you fail, well, then you're just another manager that is essentially given the white brush of it's a whitewash of no accountability, because you're just someone else that failed at Tottenham. Let's go after the guy at the top again. But if you happen to succeed, which is very much on the cards for Ange Postecoglou, then you become the guy that did what no one else has done, including Mourinho, Conte, et al. Right? Correct. So to me, it's not this poison chalice. It's a golden egg of opportunity where there's very little risk, because your reputation.
First hat on.
No risk.
You think managers aren't talking, sounding out each other before they're going for meetings with Daniel Levy? Why did we end up with Postecoglou in the first place when Nagelsmann was on the list? Arne Slot, people like that were on the list. Why did we end up at Postecoglou? You're thinking who's take yourself outside Tottenham. If we want to, sorry,
whose list were they? What do you mean Nagelsmann was on the list? Whose list?
Well, it was out there for a long time about Nagelsmann.
Yeah, but that's because he was out of work and there was a managerial spot open at Tottenham. So just like that same thing would happen if Liverpool, when Liverpool had
Jurgen Klopp, he's on our list.
You can't sit here and say with Bissek there's credibility to the articles, and then with Nagelsmann there's no credibility with the articles.
I'm not saying there's no credibility. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we don't know. I don't know if Jan Bissek rumours are true or if it's just someone that's making it up. But either way, as a content creator, I'm going to fucking
I get it. But I do think we're guilty with thinking here with our Tottenham hat on. I just think when you look at it, I think when there's a reputation and you're talking about 3-4 managers on the bounce with that reputation, eventually you do become a club where no manager really wants to go into. Everton became that club for a long time, and he ended up with the likes of Sean Dyches and stuff like that. Is that where we really want to go to?
Okay, but
that's where you're going to end up.
Manchester United had a poison chalice since Alex Ferguson left, but they can still bring in every manager that they want.
Listen, Dave, honestly, with great respect. But
okay, just on that, and what have their managers done?
Yeah, no, but they haven't. But they
since they sacked Jose Mourinho, they got worse and worse appointments. And look where they are now. Are we going to really use that as a clap the hands and everything else. Let's be real about it, lads. They got rid of Jose Mourinho. They're no longer getting in the great caliber managers that are out there in world football. And that's part of the reason why they are where they are. We're going that direction. In fact, we've accelerated that. Look where we are.
The money was still coming. Ten Hag had a reputation when he came in. Amorim has a reputation. Whether you agree with the reputation or not, they had big reps, right? With Ajax and Sporting Lisbon. And when you look at someone like Conte, right? I like Conte. I just didn't like the fact that he came across like he was doing us a favour. And look what he's gone to Napoli, right? And he's got rid of Cavachia, right, to PSG, who was outstanding, and he's replaced them with McTominay and Billy Gilmour, right? And yet he's still at the top of the league. There's no doubting his credibility as a manager.
Well, hang on. When he left here, every fan doubted his credibility. Let's be honest. We can't say
what I'm saying to you
which is just the truth.
This is proper devil's advocate stuff.
No, but it's just the truth.
Hang on a second, right? Okay, I criticised Conte. No two ways about it, right? Because I didn't like the fact that he.
Then how can we sit there and then say he's got credibility then?
Because I'm just telling you now, right? Because the way he was in the club was he was always doing us a favour. Every press conference was like, you know what, I don't need to be here. I could be.
And you think most top managers aren't going to do that when they're coming to Tottenham?
Dave, let me finish.
One at a time, guys. One at a time.
Yeah. So what I'm saying to you is he let it all go, didn't he, at Southampton? That Southampton moment there where he let it all out. Everything he felt, everything he believed came out. And most of that was true.
No, hang on. No.
It was true.
It was a geezer that does. This is why. This is what you have to remember, right? You have to. I
wanted him gone, Sean. I wanted him gone.
You have to park your personal bias, your personal opinion on the football club when you're listening to people associated with the club that talk out about the club, right? And you have to go, what's in it for them? So when people like Hugo Lloris turn around and chastise the owner for giving them a fucking watch, right? Yeah. And you're kind of going, wait, sorry, you're the longest serving captain of a football club, my football club, in my lifetime, and you're blaming Daniel Levy for creating a culture with a lack of despondency because we went to a party after the Champions League final that was organised by someone else, and that a celebratory watch that didn't have something engraved in it, or that if it didn't have anything engraved in it, it would have been just thrown into the cupboard alongside the other 100 watches that these millionaires have already got. But because they didn't know the outcome, they decided to do it that way. You're chastising that and throwing the responsibility of the club, of the playing staff's winning culture at the owner, who spends less time in the changing room than you do on a match day in the entire year of Daniel Levy, and yet the captain of the football club, who fucked off at half-time against Newcastle because he was criticised by whatever happened in the dressing room and never put on the gloves again. Right? Yeah. So I'm just saying, and people latch onto that and go, you see, Daniel Levy is responsible because Hugo Lloris is assistant. I'm saying exactly the same thing. Hang on, mate. Let me.
But I was actually talking about that before.
And Conte did exactly the same thing. He spoke from his own book, mate. He talked up his own position.
The whole point, Sean. That is exactly what I'm saying. I never liked the fact that Conte always felt like he was doing us a favour. But what I'm saying to you was he was always a top manager, and he's proved that by going to Napoli with Billy Gilmour, right, and McTominay, and getting rid of Cavachia, the PSG, who's an unbelievable player. But he was never right for Spurs. He was never right. But this thing that we can't attract a player, a manager, because of our position, our reputation. And as someone put there just before, Aston Villa attracted Emery when they were 16th, 17th in the league. It's possible because the money is there. And quite honestly, we've had so much failure at the club. They have nothing to lose. If they come to this club and they join the long list of other managers that have failed, their reputation's intact. But should they deliver any success, They're better than all of those. They delivered when no one else can.
Right.
And so that's my point. So I don't believe
It's
that
a
anyone
win-win, right, for the next manager.
Correct.
Sorry,
That's
Dave.
what I believe. That's why it's devil's advocate, Dave.
No, look, 100%. Look, I just think, even Jose Mourinho to a degree, thought he was doing us a favour as well. But if you're going after that caliber manager and you're bringing him into this football club that has a history of not winning, of course they're going to think they're doing you a favour. Of course they do. We have no right to have them guys in here as Tottenham Hotspur manager with what we produce. These are managers that have won at the top level. And the reality is, we can sit here and say, well, a manager might think they can make it work. The reality is, no manager has made it work since Pochettino. No manager. And I'm not saying it doesn't mean that a manager. I'm not saying it doesn't mean a manager won't get it right. But you talk about Aston Villa. They got rid of Johan Lang and brought in Munchie, to work with this guy and stuff like that. They do things for these managers to work with them. At Tottenham Hotspur, it's almost to a large degree. We're always, every manager, Jose, Nuno, Conte, Postecoglou, we're asking them to change, adapt, this, that, and the other. It's every single manager. It can't always be that way. At some point, if you bring in a manager and you believe in him, you've got to sort of go with his ideas, because right now, we provide the coaching staff. We provide the players to a large degree. I take now with Postecoglou's interview that maybe he agreed to this transfer policy of the youngsters and stuff like that. But the reality is we never really do enough to fix our issues to help these managers succeed. So when you're not going to do that, eventually the caliber of managers that are going to be interested in this job are going to be worse and worse and worse. And the standard on the pitch is going to get worse and worse and worse.
Dave, do you not think, Dave, what we've all wanted was quality player members of the board, and I think Vinay and Cherrington are that, better fan liaison, bringing in the money, and the return of the Don ups our game and puts us more online with the Moshies at Villa, because we've slumped since the appointment of Scott Munn, Johan Lange and Ange. This club has gone backwards. Anyone who thinks otherwise needs their head tested. And I think the return of the Don, these two quality members entering the board, gives this club a strong foothold to move forward in the right direction, in the proper way. And, let's stick to it. And, there's going to be no more criminal charges leveled against Fabio.
Well, actually, apparently he's in court. Apparently he's in court right now.
I want to throw a question out there since it's being devil's advocate. Now, last season under Ange, or the first season under Ange, I believe it was Gabbanini and Paratici orchestrating that window, if I'm correct, and then it changed from the January onwards. Well, from that January onwards, because of our transfer windows, it's got worse. Could you make the case if Ange does win the Europa League and Paratici comes back and Vinay, like you're talking about, that maybe he could do a lot better as well? Could you make that argument?
I think that there's a chance.
Ange could do better. Did you say? No. Dave, you're getting romanticized now.
No, it's not. It's devil's advocate. Is that not the name of the show?
I know, but you're getting romantic. You're getting all romantic.
No,
now.
but you posed the question that with Lang and Vinay coming in, another manager, bring him in, he's going to do brilliantly. But my point is, the first window when Postecoglou walked in here over the summer, he finished 5th that season. This year it's gone tits up. But I haven't been happy with the January window in the first season. I wasn't happy with the summer window, and I wasn't happy with the last January transfer window we've had. So you could almost make the case if Paratici comes back and he's providing the signings, then maybe Andrew get more out of it.
The thing is, Fabio doesn't do tactics. Fabio doesn't pick the team. And Fabio doesn't do the team talks. I know he'd love to. We've all seen him on the bench, but
well, there's the other variable, though, Johnny, right? Which is you don't know what a Europa League title can do for the confidence of the players that we currently have.
Oh, 100%. Confidence breeds confidence. It's always been the same. That's why a striker suddenly goes for a patch. Look at Mateta. But this is where top managers make the difference. Mateta couldn't hit a barn door for Crystal Palace. Oliver Glasner turns up, and now he's playing out of his skin week in and week out. Different players. He's improved lots of players in the year that he's been there. It's visible to see the improvement of Lacroix and other players, even Eze. His position in play, where he positions himself. On the D, there's lots you can see. I can't look at Spurs under Ange Postecoglou over the last 2 years and see improvement in players. All I can see is a natural improvement of Lucas Berghvall, because that's his natural progression from an 18-year-old coming from Swedish football to a 19-year-old. Look, I didn't say I hope Ange fails, right? That only came about when I thought this isn't going to work February last year, right? But I'm not going to be romantic here. This isn't the guy for us. You always said, Sean, he's the guy before the guy, right? And I believe that there are better managers out there. And, you know, if it's Xavi, great. I mean, Xavi has more credibility. You know, if you're trying to sign a player, who's got more credibility, Ange Postecoglou or Xavi? Oh, Xavi's on the phone. You'd like
it's not just him, right? So there's also rumours out today that Carlo Ancelotti is on the list, which I'm like,
well, Everton got rid of him. That was a fantastic decision, wasn't it?
But at this later stage in Ancelotti's career, after everything he's achieved, do you guys? I mean, first and foremost, is there any argument that you'd like to see him? Again, it's a pivot back to a different sort of formation, different sort of strategy of football and stuff. But does the guy, A, do you want to see him potentially be on the list? B, would you be happy? C, does he really want to come to Tottenham at this stage of his career? There's an argument to say, yeah, at Tottenham, there's money that, I could command a huge wage and all that stuff and all the things we've already mentioned, right? Like if I fail like everyone else. If I succeed, I'm unique. But also the other side of the coin is he's a lot older now. He hasn't got anything to prove. Why would he come to Tottenham? And like, what I'm happy to see is it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, I'm really happy that since the Paratici news, I keep getting complaints about my way I'm using his word name. Paratici, since his the noise that he's coming back, suddenly the caliber of manager we're linked with and the caliber of player we're linked with is immediately heightened, and I love to see it. In the last week, we've seen a lot of Simone Inzaghi, another name that I've apparently been butchering, Simone Inzaghi, Xavi, and Ancelotti, and less so of the Thomas Franks, less so of the Marco Silvas, less so of the. I mean, Iriola's not coming anyway, right? He's never going to come. But are you boys okay with those names being linked? And if so, are you going to tolerate even a pivot to a back three? Doesn't mean that you have to abdicate a front foot philosophy. It just depends how you employ the back three system, right? It doesn't mean look at Inzaghi. Last season scored the most goals, conceded the fewest goals in Serie A, right? So you can't make the argument that he's a boring defensive manager because he scores the most goals in Serie A. So I just think that we've all wanted to go into a different direction with our philosophy, but as I've always said from day one, the pendulum had to swing. It had to swing too far in a different direction for it to look like it was manifestly different to what we were going with before. But the next incarnation has to be a little bit of a dialing back, a little bit more contemplation of how to set up defensively.
You can't flip-flop though, Sean, right? Look, we spent the last years...
I'm not flip-flopping. I'm not flip-flopping.
No, not you. I'm talking about the club, mate. I'm talking about the club. You can't flip-flop, right? Okay, this is why we end up with Deadwood in the squad, okay? We've set up and bought players for a progressive manager. You can't then sign a pragmatic manager. It has to be signing a progressive manager that can make use of the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority of the squad that he has and add to it, right? But no more flip-flopping. The club needs to stay on his path of progressive football from here on in.
Yeah.
Okay. But those managers have to be within certain boundaries, right? There's no point going over here back to a pragmatic, and then you've got all these progressive players. We have to stay within these parameters.
Hold the line.
Yes, you can move within this field of being offensive, right? But you can't go to the other spectrum. You have to keep within that remit, is my opinion. Otherwise, we're back to square one.
For me, I'm actually relieved to see some of the names popping up, because honestly, some of the names I've seen linked, you know, in the last couple of months have been disgraceful. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't have rolled the dice with Ange for one of them. I think Iriola was one of the most hypocritical ones. You know, people moan about Postecoglou's CV, but no one done any digging into this guy's CV before Bournemouth. You know, people moan about Postecoglou pressing and playing a high line, not seeing out games. This guy dropped a 2-0 lead against one of the worst Tottenham teams in our lifetime. You know, they were so hypocritical, and I didn't think they were going to progress this club with the progression that we need. Silva, people like that, they're good to be able to stabilise you mid-table, but at Tottenham, we've got the mans of European football competing for trophies. They're never going to be them guys. So I'm actually relieved to see some of these names now on the short list. It's a different calibre of manager. I'd love Ancelotti at Tottenham Hotspur. I think, you know, it's very rare that you see a player that's had the football career and the managerial career to go with it. Usually the best footballers don't make great managers because they can't handle working with shit players. And that's just a known fact of it. You know, it's so many top players can't handle it, you know, because they're just going, well, why can't you do that? They don't understand that some people just are not on their level. But Ancelotti has been able to make it work his whole career. When you look at what he's done at Madrid, you know, the fact that he can get them players also to sit in and set up in a system and everyone does their job. That's not easy to do at a big club like that with all them personalities and stuff like that. And I do think, and you know, I listened to so many Chelsea players when he walked in at Chelsea that time and they went on and won the league. They fucking love him. The Madrid players, they bloody love him. The AC Milan players, they bloody love him.
Even Everton fans, even Everton fans that are like, you know, as fragile, I think, as Tottenham fans in terms of what they've got, where they used to be, what they've gone through. The older Everton fans from the club that they used to be a perennial top four, to then now their decline, they still reflect on Ancelotti, even though he failed there. They still reflect on with they love him.
He would be an unbelievable coup if we could get him, but honestly, I think he'll probably go and get that Brazil job. To be be honest with you, you know, and they'll look to use him to get the most out of Vinicius Junior and sort of spark them back into a life to a large degree. So, you know, and Rodrigo as well. So I think, you know, he's probably gone there. So that's off. But do you know, I'm not sold on Xavi. I wouldn't mind.
Just quickly, is he going to go to the Brazil job before the World Cup? Is that what you're suggesting?
He's rumored with he's been linked with that Brazil job for quite some time. You know, there was a large thing earlier on in the season about him, you know, and him in the Madrid contract, and you know, there was rumors out there about him being Brazil. I would say it's probably almost done. I would reckon.
Fair enough. Boys, just want to press a pause for a quick second. A couple of super chats I want to get through. First of all, I didn't really give enough time and attention, but Don Byrne, thank you very much for the super chat, mate. Sorry, for the new membership, mate. I really appreciate it. And I'll be rewarding you guys all in more formats and fashions than I have done because my attention at the moment is fully on Tottenham and I don't really have that much in the way of being able to conduct other business because of shenanigans. So I'm going to find ways to repay the loyalty of the members. Speaking of which, the Big D member for 15 months. Thank you very much, my man. Matters, huge loss. Spurs are cursed. Never easy. Yeah, it's not easy, mate. It's not easy, but we're gonna find a way to on Thursday night. We really are. Moondog saying, big up Moondog. I think you're my longest serving member, mate. I really appreciate your loyalty and the super chat. Big up, lads. Come on, you Spurs, he says. And Morton Barley, big up, Mort. Good to see you, buddy. Hope you're okay. £65 million offer from Pep for Maddison. Rumour, you take it. I saw it was £55 million, but
he can go for 40. He can go for 40.
Is anyone getting concerned though? Because you know we're seeing links with Romero, you know, and people are saying sell him. Same with Maddison. And look, I'm not Maddison's biggest fan, and I know people have question marks over Romero and stuff. But we could almost end up in a situation where you are selling off your best players, even though they may not be at the level that we need. You can't get into the situation. These are the sort of players that you want to build around, keep, and you want to be selling off the other guys around the team. What we can't afford to do this summer is sell 2 or 3 of our best players. We can't get into that situation because we will be the worst for it on the pitch.
Is there if players don't want to be here? Like I watched your show last week, mate, regarding Romero. And I don't disagree with you. Right? Like, principally, I think he's the second best centre back in our club. I don't think he's as good as everyone makes him out to be. And
who's the best?
I think Micky Van is the best, and I also think Kevin Danso is a centre back. I think he's an old school traditional centre back, and I really like Kevin Danso. But I don't think he's at the same level as Romero. But I think that Romero's got a lunatic gene in him. I think he's got mistakes. I think his availability is problematic. I think that there's a bunch of reasons why. Especially if he thinks he's better than us and he wants to fuck off. and he has the audacity to answer questions on our own training ground in a Spanish interview that basically twerks for Spain, then okay, see you later. See you later. I want the most important thing, and I think you both mentioned it earlier on. I think, Dave, you said that hard work, team effort, team ethic, and effort trumps talent all day long, right? I'm not saying that Romero is not a work merchant. He is. I think he works hard for the team when he's playing. But that whole team ethic thing, I think it's crucial, right? You need people that are all pulling in the same direction. And I see that in this squad, and I would include Maddison in this. I would include, at times this season, for what it's worth, as much as I absolutely love this guy, I would include Decky in this. But there's been interviews where I have the takeaways that I've inferred, and they're just inferences, but I have inferred that these players reflect on their own output, their own contribution as being more than good enough, and that the team's output is not good enough. And I look at that and go, you're part of the team. You're part of the team, right? So yes, you Maddison, you might have been scoring enough goals that's unusually high for a player in your position, or give or take good enough. Brennan Johnson, he hasn't said this much, but I'm just saying there's a difference between input and output. Brennan Johnson is the brilliant example of that he is, and I'm not trying to take this away from him, because I think that it's a very useful output. Gary Lineker was known as a tap-in merchant, but you have to have a talent to know where to be and when to be there to put the ball in the back of the net. It's the hardest thing in football, is to get the ball over the white line. So for me, I just sit there and go, if people are talking about themselves as doing enough, but the team doesn't, I'd sit there and say, especially when you align it with, I'd like to go to La Liga. Okay, you're not part of you're not pulling in the same direction. You're thinking about other things. And don't forget, the reason why you're unhappy at Tottenham is because Tottenham's performance isn't good enough. But your performances, Romero, this season haven't been spectacular. Your availability is questionable at times. What's the motivations? Why are you always available for your country, but very rarely available in the weeks before for your club? I just sit there and go, if you ain't pulling in the same direction as the fans, if you ain't 100% into this and talking about we rather than me, then I have a problem with that. And I don't mind if that includes Maddison. I don't really mind if that includes Decky. I don't mind if that includes Romero, because I know that there's a problem with how do you spend it, and we've got traditionally a bad track record of spending the money that we get for big players that we leave. But at the same time, for me, I want a team that want to be here. I want a team that appreciate the opportunity to play for my football club. You are a momentary custodian of the badge and the shirt number in which you're wearing, and nothing to me pisses me off more than current players twerking for other clubs when they are paid and employed to have a wonderful life by us, the fans. So respect that, appreciate that, and conduct your business either in private or at the end of the season, do what you got to do. But during the season, shut the fuck up and remember who it is that you're playing for, because Tottenham will be here and we will be here long after you fucked off to Spain or wherever else. So for me, Romero can fuck off. I don't care about him.
Look, I hear what you're saying, right? And I understand what you're saying. The interviews, and there's a way to leave a club if you want to leave, right? I fully understand that. But, Porro's been piss poor this season. Vicario's also had bad moments this season. All of our best players have all had bad moments this season. It's not just Romero. People also don't take into account with Romero. He didn't have a preseason at Tottenham. He came straight into the side. Missing preseason or not having a preseason is absolutely crucial. It's affected Destiny Udogie massively this season. And it's really hard to get up to speed and get going. And then when you don't have a preseason, you're more than likely going to suffer more injuries over that season and stuff like that. Anyone that doesn't believe me about how important preseason is, go and speak to Danny Drinkwater. Why his career tailed off after Leicester, because when he was at Chelsea, he said he missed 4 of the 5 preseasons and he just couldn't get going, stuff like that. So preseason is absolutely massive. But, we also sit here and say, yeah, Dan's up, but we've only seen him in bits and pieces. We don't know what he's going to be like week in, week out. And I would make the argument, we can sit here and question Romero's ability, but the reality is when he's in the team, we look so much more better. And I'd argue we also get a lot more out of Maddison, because Romero has the ability to find Maddison, runs in behind the back line and stuff like that. It opens us up a bit more. Romero, look, if Romero wasn't the player that, people say he's not, Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid would not be after him. They don't go after bad defenders. Notoriously, they get their defensive signings spot on. Romero is a good player at Tottenham Hotspur. But, what we can't do is we can't get into the realms of keep selling our best players. If we really want to kick on, we really want to progress, and we really want to go and challenge, you've got to keep your best players at the football club. If not, we're going to constantly keep going through this cycle of a new rebuild, a new rebuild, a new rebuild. If it's not a new rebuild for a manager, you've let a gaping size hole of someone like Harry Kane go, and you have to rebuild that. So it's constantly rebuild, rebuild, rebuild. If we want to get out of this, at some point you have to keep your best players at the football club. Also, what you have to take into account, Romero wanting to go and win trophies, it's not a bad thing. We shouldn't be angry at him for that.
It's like winner's mentality.
It's like when Harry Kane had that ambition. It's a good ambition to have. That's the ambition that the fans have. And that the whole question should be around it, rather than cave so easily and just be like, no, you've offended me, you're out of this fucking football club. We should actually sit there at some point and just look at it and go, well, you know what? If his ambition matches our ambition, should we not be,
100%
pressure on the football club?
His red card, sorry, Johnny, 5 seconds and then I'll cut you. His red card against AC Milan, brain dead fucking idiocracy of the highest order that sealed that fucking deal for us in the Champions League when Conte set us up to defend a 1-goal deficit, and then Romero gets sent off. And that's just one example. The Chelsea game when we were 10 games unbeaten, he gets sent off.
No, hang on, that was never. That was never a red card, mate. Come on.
You don't need to do what he did in that moment.
Sean, that was never a red card.
Okay,
and in today's game,
I don't disagree that as a Tottenham fan, we can see that and go, we've seen that 1,000 times and it's not given. I get it. That Romero creates a reputation where it's easy to give the red card. But again, that's the player. The guy is a liability at times. He isn't as good, as reliable, as available,
as a combo
as we think he is, and he thinks he's better than this club. See you later, Ron.
Listen, let me tell you something. Simeone is not stupid, right? And let me tell you something. The relationship and the understanding that Rodrigo Bentancur and Cuti Romero have is when those two are on song, understanding each other's game, which they had been up until this season, right, is crucial for this club. And I'll tell you what, if they get both of them, you watch how much stronger he was always going to get sent off versus Chelsea. Right. Well, it was never a sending off, was it? Everyone said that was never a sending off because after that game, there was 4 more incidents of exactly the same thing, and they never went.
Right. But he got sent off because of his reputation. And that reputation, I could have pointed to 10 other examples,
Listen,
mate.
Dave Mackay, Roy Keane. I can give you a whole load of players who had that reputation, right?
Yeah, and they got sent off. They got sent off because of it.
But it doesn't make them shit players.
Every team needs a
player. I'm not saying he's not a shit player. He's a very good player. I'm just saying he's not as good as everyone thinks he is.
Winners. I want that tough mentality. I don't want Brennan Johnson, who's running down the wing and who's too scared to have the bollocks to go past the player, right, and take the shit, take the punishment, go past him, get balled down, win a free kick, grow some balls. And that's why, I'm not a fan of Ange Postecoglou because, Brennan Johnson has got the pace. Someone needs to coach him into the fact of be brave, be bold, win the man, go man for man. You've got the skills. You don't have the bottle. You don't have him. That's why I call him Brenda Johnson, not Brennan Johnson.
I don't disagree about Brennan Johnson, but I think that you're moving the goalpost on the Romero argument.
Look at Terry. What Terry's saying is spot on. Go and look at his disciplinary record. I mean, reputation isn't always factual. It's nowhere near as bad as people go on.
Also, look, the injury record that people keep bringing up. Name me players in this Tottenham squad that haven't been out for long periods of times with injuries.
Exactly.
Pedro Porro?
Yeah,
he's the exception.
He's the exception.
And the Ven's been out. Vicario's been out. Udogie's been out. Bentancur's been out for long periods. Berghvall's now injured. James Maddison's been out. Solanke, Richalison, Udogie, all the Tottenham players get injuries. We just make it Romero specific. One player that doesn't suffer injuries, Sean. The rest of the squad do.
Hang on. The allegation against Romero is availability, not injury, right? I can respect people getting injured, but he's always remarkably fit for the Argentina games, but incredibly unfit in the games leading up to it. All I'm saying is like the jurisdiction, the kind of proximity to international time is suspicious, is what I'm saying. I'm not going to get into the specifics of Romero. We can all have our difference of opinions. I'm just saying, if £80 million comes on and he wants to go, no problem. No problem.
I get it. I get it. But, I get it. But I'm just not sure we will progress from that sale. Do you know what I mean? And that's where my problem comes in. I'm all about I want the football club to progress, and selling Romero is not going to help that progression. We can make the case, we get the money, we reinvest it, but look what we've done with the Bale money, the Modric money, the Kane money. It hasn't been reinvested right. So on the examples that we've had previously, I'm very reluctant to let our best players go, because anyone that wants to be a manager, you want to build around your best players. You don't want them to leave.
Would you be more okay? I know how much and I want to pivot this to like the return of the Don, right? So we haven't had a proper segment on it yet. I know how much you love him. I know how much Johnny loves him. I'm a fan of his too. I think that the kind of the split in this like line in the sand that Johan Lang has been an abject failure and Paratici was incredible and like perfect, I think is wrong. I think that there's an over exaggeration on Paratici, and I think that there's a bit of underappreciation on Johan Lang, especially within the remit. But would you feel more comfortable, Dave, with Tottenham's ability to spend £80 million that we could get for Romero, with Paratici at the helm of making those decisions and having final say on how to spend it, how to structure it, and all of those things that we're hearing about more and more, that Don is at the end, the Don's coming back under certain specific requests and conditions that are, I'll come back and be your DOF, and I'll work with him and I'll work with that, and I'll keep your framework in mind around what it is you want to do, but you give me the budget and I figure it out with the help of Vinny, who's an accountant. We will figure out how to structure these deals. So Daniel Levy, you take your fucking hands off the reins and let us do our thing. Are you okay with that? And you okay with Romero leaving for that sort of price under those circumstances?
Look, I would rather us try and keep Romero and sign the right players to convince him, because at the end of the day, if you're a player, you are going to be looking at it and going, right, who's coming in this window to help this kick on? If you've got the ambition of trophies, you're looking at you're judging each signing that comes in that door, and you're going, okay, he's not good enough. He's not good enough. He's not. And that's eventually where you get to the point of where Harry Kane got, Romero's getting, and stuff like that. Look, I would still rather keep Romero. I think the partnership of him and Van de Ven, I would argue, under a manager that knows how to set up his backline more, I think you would see a solid backline out of the five that we've actually currently got in Vicario, Van de Ven, Romero, Udogie, and Pedro Porro. But when it comes to Paratici, look, he's not perfect. No director of football is. They're always going to get a couple of things wrong here and there. But I think what I've really liked about Paratici is he's able to speak to Daniel Levy in terms that Daniel Levy understands. He's able to maximize, what he can get out of Daniel Levy. And what I mean by that is, he's went to him and he said, look, instead of just paying these pittings and hoping you produce a Champions League player, what you're not realizing is if you actually pay them, sign them on the dotted line. If they don't work out, you can sell them for 20, 30 million a pop, like Man City and stuff like that. So he's gone to Daniel Levy and he's basically shown him, okay, if it doesn't work out, look at the money you're going to recoup and put into your transfer budget and stuff like that. There's multiple things he's done where he's reverted it to terms that Daniel Levy understands. Even when there hasn't been extra budget in the transfer window, he's still got players in with, come in now and we'll pay for him next season. He's a smooth operator. You even look at the low market. Aston Villa utilised that well this year. Johan Lang couldn't utilise that market because he doesn't even know how to get into the room with PSG. To get these sort of deals in. Paratici does. He has connections in the game. He's done a wonderful job at Juventus. Daniel Levy's been a long-term admirer. And I think when he comes into Tottenham, I just think, everyone to a degree gave Steve Hitchen a free pass. Yeah, but look at the constraints Levy puts on him. People say the same when it comes to Johan Lang. No one had to say that when it came to Don Paratici because he was able to work within that and squeeze Daniel Levy for everything.
You don't spend, Dave. You're 100% right. You don't spend 10 years at Juventus and not have a clue. 10 years in Juventus, you're speaking to all the biggest clubs in world football. It's as simple as that, you know. And let's not forget all the players, the young players he brought into Juventus. Hence the reason why he bought us Bentancur, Kulu, and Dragusin, right? Basically,
Dragusin was a shit one. He can have that one back.
Yeah, well, let's see how he plays, Dave. Let's see how he plays.
I actually agree.
Oh, hang on,
I actually agree.
Hang on 1 second, right?
Yeah.
Right now, 100%, you have to say that he was a shit buy. But I would like to see him playing in a system that the guy played with, you know, at Genoa, right? Because at Genoa, he played in a back three and he played in central part of a back three. He wasn't playing a high line. This system exposes everybody and it made him look dog shit. Let's see how he is in a different manager. Then I will judge him and then I'll say it's an absolute failure. Because this system exposes... I'll tell you where I knew. Because I always used to blame Pedro Porro for being out of position. Out of position. And then I went to Ipswich away and Porro was rested and Jed Spence came in. And in the first 5-6 minutes, actually 10 minutes, Delap broke through on that side and Spence was nowhere. And I'm thinking, what's going on? This Spence can defend. It wasn't Spence. It was the bloody system. He's miles up the bloody...
Is it the system or is it the player that plays in the system, though, Johnny? Because
it's the system.
I do take the point about Jed Spence. You're absolutely correct. When he's gone in at right back, he hasn't looked the same as he does at left back. But when Johnson 9 times out of 10 plays right wing and he does not get back and protect that fullback the way players do on the left-hand side. Yeah. And I just wonder, is it the system or the player in the system? That's what I'm trying to work out. Yeah. And what I mean by the player is the player at right wing not willing to do his defensive duties in Johnson. You know, we know he shirks that an awful lot.
I think this comment is spot on. You know, Sean, you always go on about context, you know, for comment. And, you know, this is a prime example of it. The context of the question.
No, I hear you. But it's not just that particular interview, right? Like I'm going to give some of the journalists some of the credit to not just be clickbaity. That there's some, like a lot of these journalists, a lot of the higher echelons are saying, and again, like who knows the truth, right? You're right. There's always context. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the context of being asked a single question can also be thrown back at you and say, well, in context, he should have known where he was, stage of the season, and that his words are going to carry weight, that they're not going to get out. He's not an idiot. He's a grown man. He's a World Cup winner. He knows what he's doing. And the context of the question might have been he's just answering a question. Just like Maddison, right? I saw Maddison in the when he was coming out for the Bodo game pre-match presser and was asked his questions about and he was like, what, we or me or us or we and all that stuff. And I was like, well, this is another example of him that's basically, I think, including this, it encourages this narrative that he doesn't include, that the Tottenham players do not feel like the fans are on their side. And like the Jose Mourinho Chelsea... Yeah, right. And the Jose Mourinho Chelsea narrative, when Mourinho was manager of Chelsea in his first stint, he created this narrative of like, it's us versus them. The media are against us. Everyone's against us. We've got to do this in spite of them, not because of them. But he included the Chelsea club and the fans in the us part. And I feel like that there's some similar kind of vibes coming out from the manager and certain players. But the them side of that, sometimes I feel like it includes the fans because we're not happy. And the journalist who asked the question said, like, the fans have got a right to feel upset. And he's like, yeah, well, we do too. And I was sort of going, well, this is another example, James, of you not really reading the room here. And then I watched the rest of the interview and he was asked questions about like Lucas Berghvall and Matisse Tell. And he sort of answered them with brutal honesty as well. That also was a little bit odd. Like he's like, oh, what do you think of Lucas Berghvall? Well, when he first came to the club, he was like a busy mosquito or whatever. Just he was everywhere. He was basically like a little brother or whatever he said. I forget, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially like not the sort of thing you'd expect to hear. And then asked about Matisse Tell as well. And he gave again some sort of critical feedback in an interview about a player. And you just don't expect to see it. So now I'm like, is James Maddison just brutally honest? Which if so, is cool, it's fine. At least you know where you stand with him. But at the same time, you are a grown man who's a professional footballer who is not unused to Or
he loves himself, Sean.
I know he does, but like, one second, Johnny.
Yeah.
He's not inexperienced in the art of knowing that what you say in front of a camera is going to get twisted and spread and played around in 1,000 different ways. And to me, the super chat here, I hear you. Like, there's context to the question being asked. He's just answering it, but there's also context to the idea of, like, remember where you are, what you're saying, who you're saying it to, and the fact that it's going to get around. They're going to be interpreted, whether misinterpreted or otherwise, by people like me. And I'm just sitting there saying, sorry, Romero, you're a vice captain of the fucking football club. Sorry, James Maddison, you're a vice captain of the fucking.
Yeah, 100%. So just to add to that, Shawnee, right? When we lost to Liverpool, we got absolutely wiped off the pitch. We were conservatively beaten 5-1. Could have been 7 or 8. James Maddison turns around and says, ignore the noise. Don't pay any attention to the fans and their nonsense. The fact that they spent 4 or 5 hours driving there and 4 or 5 hours driving back is no concern to me. Just ignore them. Just ignore them.
Yeah.
Right? That pissed me off. That pissed me off. You know, how dare you? I respect the fans. I understand the fans being upset. That's what you should be saying.
Johnny, I've said to you before, just quickly, Dave, I said to you before, Johnny, when you said, like, we travel, you go to a lot of the away games and that, and I've said, just remember that accessibility to away tickets and money to afford them is not the same. Like, it doesn't mean that you're, not you personally, but anyone who thinks that I'm a bigger fan because I do this. It's not true. Having said all that, I don't just expect the fans to come over there and give us a round of applause. Having dropped 1,300 quid for a flight to Bodo, if I don't get a personal invite to James Maddison's end of season party, I will be fucking furious.
No, come on, Sean. Come on, mate. Listen, look, I was at the Wolves game. I was at the Wolves game where Romero went down the tunnel, where Ange Postecoglou didn't even want to come over. Come on. We drove up there. At least, right, we got to suck it up week in, week out. If you don't perform, got to face the music. You're happy to take the plaudits and the adulation where you have success. You have to stand in front of us as fans. I'm not saying I'm better, or the 3,000 or 4,000 fans that go to every away game are better than the ones who can't get there. But they're showing the dedication, and you're showing a lack of respect to turn around James Maddison and say to these fans, don't listen to them. It's just noise.
By going to the away fans, you're almost going to every other fan that's watching the game through the telly at home that can't be there. You're almost showing them, thank you for turning up. But, honestly, I don't think that's from the players. I do think that comes from Postecoglou. When Postecoglou was in at Celtic, his whole narrative was, because the media were up against him straight away, he used that to his advantage, and he said it's us against them. The difference is the Celtic fans bought into what he was doing. At Tottenham, the Tottenham fans ain't having him. He knows that, and I think the narrative comes from within, from him. Anybody that's not with you is against you. And I think that's where it's filtering down into the players, because even players that have come out in defense of Postecoglou, when they're talking about wanting to win the Europa League, and this is not just, it's been Maddison, it's been Johnson, I think Van de Ven as well, if I remember correctly. I think Vicario might have said something similar. The fans is always last when they say who they want to win it for. They say first they want to win it for the manager, then themselves, and then the fans are last. And I do think that sort of, there is a collective, and I felt this for quite some time this season, that they absolutely hate the fan base. They absolutely hate it. And what astonishes me is they're getting to the point, look, let's be honest, right? No one wants to go over in front of 4,000 or 5,000 people knowing that you're going to get, you're an F in this, you're an F in that, everything else, right? No one wants to do it. But the thing is, instead of just resigning over and go, if you're not with us, you're against us, F you. Why aren't you using that as motivation to go, we don't want to face that again? Instead of just going, we're not facing it, we're going to walk down the tunnel, we're going to do this. If you don't want to face it again, use it as motivation. It's the same as anything in life or anybody. If you don't want something to happen to you again, use it as motivation so it doesn't happen to you again. Bring all the things in.
Do you think that, like, the rest of us, whatever we do for our jobs, right? Do you think that none of us have shitty parts of our job? Do you think the guy who, like, cleans sewers really wants to scrape dog shit or, like, the shit off the fucking walls of the sewer? No, he doesn't, but it's part of his job. Do I want to phone up a client and explain why this month's campaign hasn't quite gone as well as last month? No, I don't. But I do it because if I don't do it, then I'm not going to get that client for much longer. Like, there's parts of your life, parts of your job, and these footballers, I think, are a little bit too prissy and a little bit too protected and a little bit too ungrateful for the fact that they earn as much money as they do to kick a fucking football around, and they don't realise that money disappears. without the fans, because it all comes back to the fans, especially if you're working in a club that is self-sustaining, which Tottenham, tries to be. Daniel Levy doesn't put his hand in his pocket. Daniel Levy's pocket is also filled with the money from the fans. All of the people that are paid by Tottenham Hotspur in some form or fashion are paid via the fans. And they need to remember that and recognise that there's responsibilities in their conduct, in their gratitude, and in their media interviews, their press behaviour, that this shit gets out and that we're going to turn it into what we want to turn it into. So think before you fucking speak, and don't think of us as the enemy. We are your bread and butter. Without 100%. Us, you don't get anything.
Sean, that's my whole point. They're here to take the adulation, and the adulation from the fans when it's all good. And yet you can't, if you take that adulation, you have to face the music when it's not going well. That is part and parcel of the job. No one's job is sheer bliss 24/7, no matter what you do. If you're a trader on the stock market, when the stock market's going up, it's great. But when suddenly you got Black Friday or Black Monday and the stock market collapses, you're not having a good day. Got to suck it up. And the players seem to be at this club resentful of anything that's bad, but happy to take anything that's good. I saw him at Frankfurt coming over to the fans and lapping it up. And rightly so. It was a special moment. But where are you?
What was the game where Vicario went over and had a row with the fans? It was a away game in Europe. There wasn't it? Was that Galatasaray away? I forget where it was.
Galatasaray. But he's look. There's been so many incidences. Look at Ange Postecoglou. Nothing bothers me. This is nothing. Everything's water off a duck's back. I'm used to it. Nothing you say is going to affect me. And then when we see him ranting and raging against fans, his own fans, confronting his own fans. Yeah. Bullshit, mate. Right, you're paid millions of pounds a year. You're happy to take Ange Postecoglou when they were singing his name and he was up there clapping. Now it's all gone Pete Tong. You still got to go out there and face them. You can't be hiding on the other side of the pitch. Oh, I don't want to go near them. And people say to me, would you go near them? And I said, well, I wasn't taking the adulation for months on end and taking the money. That's part and parcel of the job. Suck it up.
You know what it is, mate? That you learn a lot from people by their demeanour in difficult circumstances. I know someone who's a very highly functioning alcoholic, right? Very, very highly functioning. You wouldn't know that they're alcoholics, but
Winston Churchill was one.
Well, they're a perfect example, right? But you always, whenever I see this guy and I say, mate, you're smashed. And not judging, you know me, right? I'm someone who likes to drink anyway. But his reaction when he's drunk is one of indignance. He's like, I wish I was drunk. Whenever I hear those phrases, I know that you absolutely are smashed and that you're just you're denying it. Whereas if you were tipsy or if you were sober, you would laugh it off. But the fact that you are drunk, you don't like being accused of it. And I think that Ange Postecoglou is a perfect example of someone who, when he says, I don't give a fuck, I don't care what they say, he really does care. He really hurts him. He really does cut him deep. He's more sensitive than people think. Guys, I want to move this conversation on for the last segment. I don't know how much time you guys have got.
Yeah.
I've got to play one game with you guys. Remember, we're bringing this one back. So this is about transfers right now and how we move forward in the summer. And this one, of course, is called Goodbye or Goodbye. Goodbye or Goodbye? So we're going to ask you some names of players that are going out and players maybe going out and players that may be coming in. I just want your kind of real quick, super quick takes on the rumours. We've been talking about him already, but Christian Romero, is he a goodbye that you keep or is he a goodbye sayonara? Johnny, I'll start with you.
I thought you were going to play Snog, Marry, Avoid or something.
That's excellent.
We're playing the Norwegian version.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a difficult one for me. If we win the Champions League, keep. I'd love to keep him, personally.
Make sure you play in the comments, by the way. Goodbye or Goodbye? Dave?
Yeah, keep. Goodbye. As in B-U-Y.
Yeah. Okay. Pedro Porro to Manchester City for £75 million. Goodbye or Goodbye?
Goodbye.
I'd keep him.
I don't dislike him. Let me just add for context here. 75 million. we could do a lot with that 75 million, and we could play Jed Spence and get him back up to as a right back.
You're still going to need another right back though, and
and another left back.
Yeah,
and another left back, or both. Yeah. So, like, to me, I sit there and go, it's the hardest position. I think it's the hardest position in football, especially in systems that look to do that sort of thing that we're doing. And we've struggled massively, right? We had Kyle Walker, then we had Kieran Trippier. Pedro Porro is probably the best subsequent, option that we've had, but he's got his vulnerabilities.
Listen, he's a former Man City player, so he will understand the club and understand Pep. So,
for me, unless that money's going into straight buying a right back and a left back, I don't think we can afford to sell him. I think we need to get another left back and have 4 options before we start considering selling off our fullbacks.
Yeah. Any idea you want as left back?
I really like that guy at Fulham. I really like the guy Karkesh at Bournemouth. I think they're two players you bring in.
I mean, the thing is, Robinson is 28, coming up 29. So for me, doesn't fit. He doesn't fit the mold really. Look, what we do at Spurs, which is really a pain in the arse, is that we sell the players, then try and find someone. I'd rather bring them in and get the person in before we sold, but that's not how we operate. Go on, who's the next one?
Well, just quickly, would you take Kenny Tete?
Yeah.
How about you, Dave? Would you take Kenny Tete?
No.
Or Aina, Nottingham Forest, free transfer? Aina?
I'd take Aina on a free.
Yeah, potentially. Honestly, I know Johnny said about the age, but I think this is the sort of bracket that Spurs need to go into. One thing that's been missing this season is leadership on the football pitch when things ain't going right. And I think you need 28, 29-year-olds who sort of come into their end of their career where they won't accept that almost. And I think, he would be a perfect signing.
Leif Davies is very good for Ipswich, but he's tailed off. He started very strongly, but he's tailed off just recently. But yeah, he's a good player. Again, not as young as you would think.
Next up on goodbye is James Maddison.
33 and a third, as we said, right from the point of signing. 33% fantastic. 33 and a third % of the season injured. 33 and a third % of the season coming back from injury, struggling to find form. Sell.
Do you know what? For me, look, I'm not Maddison's biggest fan, and when we were signing him, I would have rather took a gamble on someone like Pedro Gonçalves than signing James Maddison. My problem is, I think all the drama and the off-field drama and everything else sort of overshadows what he actually contributes on the pitch to a large degree. However, again, I would keep him until we get better in this team and then eventually phase him out and then maybe look to cash in next summer. I wouldn't be keen to sell him right now.
My sister's harder than him.
I think
so much about the guy that winds me up, but
there's so much about him as well. But the rolling around on the floor thing isn't. I don't think it's massively problematic. I think he's good at drawing fouls, but there's a lot of reasons why I dislike James Maddison. The rolling around thing isn't one of them. But moving on, boys, for the sake of time, Richalison, goodbye or goodbye?
It's got to be goodbye, unless he gets some game time in him, we won't be able to sell him.
Look, he's gone anyway.
Can you do this means goodbye, and that means goodbye. Okay, so from now on, just use your hand as well to help me know what the difference is.
Because I'm conscious of.
I know you, Johnny. Dave.
Okay.
Look, I think it's inevitable he's gone. His availability over the last 3 years hasn't been what we need for the money that we paid for him. But I would then make the argument, anytime he plays, he contributes goals and assists in this system underneath Ange Postecoglou a lot more than Dom Solanke. However, the availability isn't good enough, so goodbye.
Better than Dom Solanke, in my opinion. I didn't even want Dom Solanke, right? If you'd have given me any striker, right, he wouldn't have been in my top 5.
Okay. Matisse Tell, goodbye or goodbye?
For 50 million? No. If you want to do a loan for one more season to see how he is, how can you buy a player for 50 million? You don't know who the manager is. The guy hasn't shown 50 million pounds worth of talent at the moment. We saw Mikey Moore come on And in that 10, 15-minute spell, he created more than any of them had created. So for me, no, unless it's a loan with another year to see whether we can get something out of him.
Do you know what? Largely, I was against the Matisse Tell deal from the off, especially as a striker, because I never thought he was going to be the guy to come in and
striker, is he?
score the goals that we needed. But you know what? Out at left wing, he sort of changed my opinion of him recently. I think I'm starting to see a player that's maybe starting to find his feet a little. You know, I do think he's got great trickery there. Don't get me wrong. End product's still in question. And again, 65 million that it's going to take, you know, is he that much better than Micky Moore? I'm not quite so sure. But if we could get that down to 30 million, I would snap him up. He's changed my opinion. I just think, you know, when I look at Tottenham right now, even in the Premier League games, he's sort of the one out there that's saying, look, don't forget about me. I'm putting my hand up for Thursday night, 100%. Whereas other people are still sort of, you know, just going through the motions. And I like that because, you know, I'm coming into that West Ham game, one big bugbear for me is it's like, yeah, but look, one eye is on Thursday. It's like, hang on. Pape Matar Sarr's eye shouldn't be on Thursday. He's not going to start. Neither should half of these guys. So I want to see them turn up. This is why you have a squad for these games. You don't buy a squad and go, oh, by the way, you also take the day off while we're resting these guys.
And this is why those 8 of those 11 players that haven't got a sniff for Thursday are not part of the Thursday plans.
Yeah,
because they're the sort of people that drop the ball in the games that don't matter. But he's 100% showing the grit and the graft that the others aren't.
Sure. Can I just say, sorry, just one thing, Dave. I was just going to say that was the standout, right? Because the others were so nonplussed about the whole game against West Ham, it stood out like a sore thumb that Matisse Tell has much to prove to win over the club to make the deal permanent. And that's what stood out. But when you have a level of this,
he only takes that. He only takes that.
Makes him stand out. And you know, I don't think you will see that him trying that much more than anyone else in a big game that matters. But in the Premier League right now, no one is bothering. He's the only one, and maybe Micky Moore, who have got something to prove, you know, to show what they can do.
But I think there's a lot to be said for that attitude in a time like this, Don. Look, I get what you're saying. You know, is he standing out because everyone else is like this? But at the end of the day, it takes a special type of attitude to go, do you know what? And he's got his eyes on Thursday night. You know, that's the sort of attitude I want in and around this football club. And what I actually like about Matisse Tell out wide is how quickly he maneuvers that ball with both feet. You know, that's something that really can't be taught. You either have it or you don't. And I do think when I look at it, that is a develop with the right coach, where you can develop this guy into a winger. He's never, ever going to be a top-level striker, but as a winger, I think he's got a chance if you pair him up. If Pochettino had him, this guy would be an absolute gem moving forward. But like I said, 65, when you've got a lot of holes to fill, 60 million is a lot to be spending on a 19-year-old.
Yeah, so I think we're all on the same page. Renegotiate to a price worth paying, and we'll think about it, right?
Yeah.
But the current deal, no, thank you. Okay. Vicario. Goodbye or goodbye?
Goodbye. Can't we?
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Goodbye.
Yeah,
goodbye for me. Yeah, you listen. It's a shit show right now. You can't give up on him. You know, I think he's stopped more goals and more shots than any other player in the league. That's including him being out injured. So can you imagine where we would be without some of his saves this season? You know, however shit we are now, we would be in a far, far worse position. I mean, I just think about the Ipswich game. We could have been 3-0 down in the first 10 minutes. He made 2 or 3 fantastic saves. And we've had that. Yes, we see him. He's not great in his ball distribution with his feet. He's been a bit tetchy. He's punching out a goal. He's not the perfect goalkeeper, but he's still young enough to be improving.
Okay. I think if we don't see them improvements next season, it's a conversation.
Correct.
And what I mean by improvements, like I think he's actually one of the best shot stoppers in modern football. Where it's for me, it's just I think he could offer the back line and centre back so much more protection if he came out and claimed ball. Like we've seen Ipswich goalkeeper come out and do it. David Raya do it continuously for Arsenal. That's an area of his game where he could actually help us out a hell of a lot more. Like everyone goes at Romero and Van de Ven, but no one ever looks at Vicario. You know, the amount of times Raya comes out and protects that Arsenal back line with crosses into the box. Vicario doesn't do. He has to improve in that game. And also, I would argue his distribution with his feet has got worse over time. He needs to fucking improve on that.
Okay. Pape Matar Sarr.
Keep.
Yeah. I think the kid's got a raw deal this year. You know, I think, you know, some could argue, has he made that step up, you know, that progression that he needs to make? Probably not. But I think one thing that people don't know is this guy's carried an injury for a large part of this season and he's been managing it.
Johnny?
For me, Senegalese international, still young, still improving. And he's the one player, when he picks up the ball and drives across the box, who's going to actually have a shot and has got the strength of shot to have a shot from outside the box. We don't have anyone that does that. That's why I want Eze. Eze just picks up the ball, bang, from outside the D, bottom corner, top corner. And Pape Sarr offers us that. I mean, late in the game against West Ham, there was a moment we drove across the box and hit a ball. It went over the bar, but not a lot over the bar. And that's what we need. We need someone who offers us that. I think, like Dave said, he's had a raw deal as well this season. With the right manager, look, we paid 12 million for him. Without a doubt, we're making profit on him should we sell him. But I wouldn't sell him.
That's the argument, though, right? That's the argument. You could probably get 25 million with a 10-15% sell-on fee, whatever else included.
Yeah, but I wouldn't sell him
Very
just
young.
Okay. Another season.
Fair enough. Last two for you guys. Brennan Johnson, goodbye or goodbye?
Where's my mummy? Listen, Brend, look, I just want to see him. Look, I'm going to say keep him only for two reasons. Obviously, he knows how to put the ball in the net. Just the hope that the next manager that comes in can take Brennan to the next level of his game. Because I think if he can be more involved in the game, which he's not, and he can take on his man, start winning free kicks, start beating his man, and get to that byline like an Aaron Lennon and crossing the ball more, I think there's a player in there. But he's so frustrating. Honestly, he's one of the most. He's one of the players that I'm so conflicted about. You know, how do you reject a player who's got our best GA this season, yet frustrates just about everyone with his lack of, contribution throughout the rest of the game? He needs to grow a pair and start taking risks.
Yeah, look, for me, I would wave goodbye to him. I would cash in on him if we could recoup anywhere near what we paid for him. I just think, we look, don't get me wrong, he's got 16 goals this season. That's nothing to be sniffed at, arriving in at the right place. It's a trait to have, but that's a trait a striker should have. And I know people make the argument, he was playing there for Forest to a certain degree. We should give him an opportunity there, but he doesn't have all the other things that a striker needs to be able to play at this level for a manager to ever say, you're going to be my guy up front that I can rely on. So in order to carve it out as a Premier League career, it's going to have to be as a winger. And honestly, the fact that this guy can barely beat a man, barely deliver a decent cross, can't really hold up the ball. There's so much missing that I would, despite the goals, I do think you could get someone else that can come in. Like if you bring in a winger that assists and score goals, which is what you expect from your winger, I think you don't miss that at all. So for me, goodbye.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The man can't beat an egg, let alone a man. And I just think that you could get your money back on him because of his output, right? There's people who are going to sit. Daniel Levy could sit there and argue, or whoever, Paratici could sit there and argue and say, you're paying that money. That's where we value him because he got us 25 GA this season or whatever it is, right? So that's
sure, look who someone's just sent me, mate. I don't know if anyone can see that.
That you in an Arsenal shirt. With Arsenal, wowzers! AI is scary. AI is scary.
How scary is AI?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I guess. Assuming that we're all going to agree that Bissouma can go, then unless you've got a different take on that, if we can, then I'll give you the last one, which is Roddy Bentancur.
Keep.
100%.
Why?
because on his day, listen, just go and watch the game against Brazil for Uruguay just recently and just see the guy. The guy is levels above Bentancur against Bissouma, and a lot of our midfielders. I just think he's quality. The only thing he's lost in these two serious injuries is a bit of a yard of pace, and that's probably taken a bit off of his game. But even so, I really, really rate him personally.
Yeah, I really like Bentancur. I think he's a good technician in midfield on the ball, and I think out of possession he provides a bit of cover. Don't get me wrong, I think if we were to have better midfield options, then maybe I would consider it. But where that midfield is right now, I would look to keep him until we bring in better, and then maybe have that conversation further down the line. But I do think he's probably our best midfielder alongside James Maddison. Like I said, I don't like getting into the habit of selling on our best players.
So I would make the argument that Bentancur is best in the 8, but we have better 8s than him. He's okay in the 6, but I think if you watch him off the ball, when we have possession but the ball's nowhere near him, he isn't playing touch tight. He's not doing the rest defence well enough. And I think he's a vulnerability at times when he's playing in that 6 role, or the sort of lower of the 3 midfielders, whatever you want to call them. And I think that if you want to keep him as an 8, then fine. But then you have to make a better decision around Pape Sarr, because neither of those two are 6s. And if you want him to play in the 6, I think you have to open your eyes and see what he doesn't do when we have the ball and what he doesn't do when we don't have the ball, and recognise that there are levels to what a 6 needs to do. And I think his DNA is 8 based, and I think that is problematic. And so it's about pecking order for me. But in an ideal world, fully fit squad, he doesn't get into the team. If we go and get a monster 6, and then you have Lucas Berghvall in the 8, and then you have someone else in the 10, whether that's Maddison or some new guy.
Listen, for me, I think the fans always say the same thing. Oh, he's never going to start. Forget that nonsense, guys, right?
Squad game.
21st century football is about squad football, right? Okay? We don't have a good enough squad right now, okay? We have no backup left centre-back, or competitive. I keep saying it, but I keep making the mistake.
Yeah, that's arguably the second most important position this summer.
Backup. The word backup should be struck, because
rotation.
Competitive, right? No player, and that includes every player that we think is the best player of the club should be a God-given right to start the game. Competition for all places is imperative if you want success. And right now we have no competitive left centre back.
For a guy who only plays 50% of games.
Yeah. Correct. And, we don't have a competitive, creative midfielder. We have a creative midfielder that can probably play 30, 40% of games in a season. So, that's to bear in mind.
There's lots to do, guys. Listen, we run out of time because I know you guys will be taking up 2 hours of your time, but we'll do the rest of the incomings on the goodbye game next week if everything's good with the Devil's Advocate. Guys, that was your Devil's Advocate. Make sure you smash the subscribe on the Irish Hotspur. I'm back over there with him and Johnny tomorrow. Is it tomorrow night, Dave?
Yeah, tomorrow, 6.
Tomorrow night. Usually on a Tuesday, but Wednesday we're over there at 6 o'clock. What's crack-a-lacking, Dave? What else is coming up on the Irish Hotspur? And then, Johnny, I'll let you plug your socials as well, mate.
Yes, we're going to have that, debate show tomorrow. Myself, yourself, Johnny and Sam. What I've got lined up is I do want to have a conversation around Micky Moore and what's best for his development next season. Manor Solomon, maybe there's a potential conversation around there. Does Spurs look at him in pre-season now that he's proved his fitness, or do you cash in while the iron's hot? And then we're also going to talk about James Maddison, what you make of his season and whether we should cash in or not, and then whatever bit about Paratici and stuff like that as well. So make sure you get over for that tomorrow. And then Thursday is just your usual sort of game day stuff. I can't go to Bilbao with you guys, so I have to fill my joy somehow. So I'll be with the pre-match build-up and the watch.
Oh, you're going to Bilbao?
Oh, no, sorry, Bodo, I meant.
You are going to Bilbao, right?
Yeah, I'm going to Bilbao, yeah.
Dave's getting the air trains and automobiles or whatever. He's got to find a way to get there. I'm going to get Dave absolutely paralytic on Wednesday in Bilbao, and I can't wait to see Dave like fucking swaying from one side to the other, smashed like he's on a boat, which he will have been for 28 hours to get there. It's going to be sensational. Johnny, what's coming up on your socials, mate? Where can people find you?
So tonight I'm on Kings TV. Tomorrow, I'm on with Dave. Thursday, you and I and Henry fly out to Bodo.
So jealous.
Hell yeah!
So jealous.
Oh,
I was hoping for snow. I was hoping for winds. You know,
there'll be snow.
I wanted to see the Northern Lights rather than red lights. And then I come back. We land about 4 or 5 in the morning, and then Friday I'm on Last Word of Spurs while we'll be cogitating and digesting.
You ain't waking up for that show, mate. You know, you'll be.
I know. I will be messed up. I will be messed up come Friday. But no, you can find me on Talking Tottenham 1882. There we go. Talking Tottenham 1882 on Instagram and on TikTok. My TikTok needs a bit of a boost up. So, but the Instagram's flying along nicely. And thanks to everyone for your support. And thanks to everyone who's been here for the last 2 hours listening to Dave, Sean and myself cackling away.
Well, listen, Devil's Advocate was back. It's been a while. And I know we did one about a month ago, which was like a reintroduction to it. But listen, today was fire. There was arguments, there was disagreements, and it's all in good jest.
How it should be, mate. It's about opinions. Love it.
The Devil's Advocate is where you can find passion and friendship that cohabitate the world of football and Tottenham Hotspur fans. Guys, if you enjoyed it, please smash the like button on your way out. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure you do go over to the Irish Hotspur and to Johnny H3232 and Talking Tottenham 1882 on the various socials. And we'll see you later on tonight. I'm going to be on the Dan List, the Spurs Dan List, a guy who I have seen on Saba's channel a couple of times. He's invited me onto his channel. So I think that's 6:30 over there. So if you fancy that, then get over there and make sure you subscribe to him. And then, tomorrow you'll be back with me for some pre-match fun, no doubt. Love you all. Thanks for your super chats. Thank you for your support, guys. Smash all the subscribes and the social hits, and we'll see you in the next one. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, guys,
come on, you Spurs. We can do this.
Come on. Brilliant.